The math you were taught about money is keeping you broke. And it's not because you don't earn enough. It's because the number that you've been taught to measure your growth with, it's wrong. Now, it's not your fault. Nobody taught you this number. Your advisor, he watches the same number that you do. The bank, the school, the system, and almost every other finance guru on YouTube, they all watch the same number. They've been tracking the wrong number. The one that makes your wealth stall out. It's the reason that people who did everything right, who saved for 30 years, still hit retirement and find out it's not enough. But the 1%, the family offices, the people who actually build real wealth, they don't watch the same number. They watch a completely different metric. And the day you see it, you'll understand why the same starting capital that leaves you stuck makes them millions without ever having to earn a dollar more. So let's go. All right, we got a big video today, and I love these ones where I can break down these misconceptions, these commonly held beliefs. And I know some people are like, hey, you don't know what I know. How do you know I have the wrong number? Well, let's just wait and see. So the roadmap here, we're gonna talk about the number that you were taught to watch. And again, I know you were taught to watch this, the same number I was taught to watch. We're all in the same financial system here, right? Well, we're gonna look at the number that the wealthy watch instead. Now, the problem with this for most people is like, you know, how many billionaires do you hang out with on a regular basis? And so most people just don't have access to see what they're doing. So we're gonna break that down. And then of course, the system that you can use that turns the second number into real money. Because what's the point of having this knowledge if I don't put it into action, right? So let's break it down. Let's go as quick as we can so we don't drag this thing out. Okay, the number that you know first. What's the number that you already know? The number that you already know is ROI, right? We're talking about investing. Anybody know what that is? Put in the chat down below, ROI. Let's see, return on investment, right? Well, that's the common number. That's the number you were taught to watch. We're investors, right? We want to know our returns. But the problem is that 43% of Americans aged 55 to 64 have no retirement savings. So the number that everyone's been focused on through their investing career, their retirement planning, working with their financial advisors, their financial professionals, it hasn't worked out too well. So if that doesn't work out too well, while at the same time people continue to get more and more wealthy, we see it all the time, charts that just show this income inequality gap is just growing more and more rapid. The rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer. Well, why is that? We all have access to the same financial system. Maybe it's the strategies that we're using that break down the difference. Okay, so let's think about this another way, for example. So let's just say, for using round numbers, I'm not real good with math on the fly here. So let's say that we have $1 million home. Let's go ahead and just put a roof on that house right here, and it's $1 million home. And the median US real estate's going up by about 5% a year. So my asset is a home. My asset is worth $1 million. The median home goes up at 5%. So $1 million times 5% means that my return on my investment or my return on my asset went up by $50,000 a year, right? That's the number that we know. Makes sense. Okay, but is that the right number? Well, let's take a look at what the wealthy do instead. Okay, so the wealthy use a different number. The wealthy use not ROI, they use ROE. And ROI tells you, what did my asset return? The $1 million home went up by 5%. The return on my investment or my asset went up by 50,000. But the ROE tracks something completely different, something that most people have never thought of. ROE tracks, what did my equity return? So let me give you an example. Let's go back to the same example that we just used. In this example, again, let me put a roof on here. So I have $1 million home. It goes up by $500,000 a year. But let's say, like most people, if I have an investment property, it's a rental property, it's an apartment complex, a triplex, a fourplex, or it's even my single family home, most likely we have a loan against it, right? We use debt. We're in a debt-based monetary system. Of course, we're using debt to buy these things, which provides us leverage, and we can get into all that. It's a different subject. But I have $1 million home, so I have a loan against that, and I put some money down, plus my property's appreciated. So let's just say that I have $400,000 of equity in that property. Now, what's interesting is that this $400,000 in equity is just sitting there. It's sitting there in the asset. My $1 million home is going to make me $50,000 over the next year at 5% return. But what is the equity returning for me? Now, some people might say, well, I guess I could take the 400,000 and the 50,000 and come up with an equity percentage, but that's not the way to do it. It's not the way the wealthy do it. Because what happens with this $400,000 equity? More specifically, if this $400,000 is in this property, will that affect how much this $1 million home goes up by? That's the way to look at it. So the answer is no. If I have $10,000 in this property or $100,000 or I pay cash, the $1 million asset is going to go up at 5% either way, which means the $400,000 that's sitting in the property is effectively making me about zero because it doesn't have to be there. It could be somewhere else doing something different, controlling another asset. So when we just watch the return on our investments or the return on our asset, we're missing what we really have. You see, in a debt-based monetary system, we use debt. Money is created when debt is issued. But in order to get the debt, we have to have collateral. So the assets become the collateral, but we're not using the collateral. We're not even looking at the collateral. All we're looking at is the ROI on the asset. Okay, so we want to think about it a little bit differently. So if I have return on my asset, again, it's what did the asset do, the home, times the appreciation. But return on my equity asks, what is the $400,000 doing? That could be doing something different. So for example, if my home is going up by say 10% a year, 5–10% if you put your own number on that. But I take this $400,000, I put into another asset like the NASDAQ, for example. But now I have, let's say, $400,000 times, call it 20% in the NASDAQ. So now I have this asset, $1 million going up at 10%, I made 100K over here, but now I have 400K going up by 20% and I made 80K over here. So now combined, I have 180K, whereas before I'd only made that. But that's only if I focus on the equity position and not the total asset. Okay, so you have to understand this goes into a system that allows us to measure this. So just think about this yourself. Get out a pen and paper, pause this video if you want real quickly, and think about your own equity. Now, we have equity, right? Because we have a debt-based system. And I also have assets. So for example, Bitcoin, as we call it, is like pristine collateral. That means I own it and typically there's no debt against it, but there's also equity there. So how much equity do you have that isn't adding to how much the value of that asset is going up? Again, using the home for example, if I have $1 million home and I have $400,000 in equity, potentially I have approximately $400,000 that will not affect how much this home goes up by or not. You got an example, right? So think about that. Think about what assets you have that have equity in them that could be there or not and won't affect how much the asset goes up or down. Now you're starting to realize you have a lot more equity, a lot more capital, a lot more collateral that you could use to build wealth. That's what family offices do. That's what hedge funds do. That's what the 1% wealth builders do. Okay, now let's think about if that is so common and if that's so true, then why doesn't everybody do that? Obviously, right? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Why doesn't everyone do that? First of all, because of the debt. So the debt is a double-edged sword. What do I mean by that? So a lot of you, if you watch this channel regularly, you know that in 1971, right here, President Richard Nixon removed the dollar off of the gold standard and we went into a pure fiat debt-based monetary system. So what that means is pre-1971, a lot of you watching this video right now, we're building wealth pre-1971. We were in what was called an equity-based system. And in an equity-based system, you didn't want to have debt. You wanted to pay debt off as fast as you could, and you wanted to build equity instead. But in 1971, post-71, we went into a debt-based monetary system. That means we don't want to save because savings is getting eaten away by the debt. And instead we want to use debt because the inflation pays our debt off for us, which is why the government wants so much of it. And you can see this is the M2 money supply. So you can see up until 1970, the money supply was basically flat. If I carried this out, this is the green line right here. You can see it was basically flat. But as you can see, the rate of money supply growth has gone exponential. And the reason why is because the government wants the inflation to pay off the government debt, which is why we want to use debt so it pays off our debt. And most people are still learning systems. They went to school that had textbooks that were written in 1971. They're listening to their parents who built wealth post-1971, and they don't realize that the global monetary system changed. And because of that, we have to change the approach that we use. Another reason why is this. You'll love this. This is a curve. Some people are here, some people are here, some people are here. So on this side of the curve, let's call these broke people. Now, I don't want to say broken money. Let's just say it's a broke mentality, because all it is a mindset of how I approach the game. Broke people use lots of debt, use lots of debt. They use lots of debt, too much debt, but they use it for depreciating assets. So these people down here, man, they have way too much debt. They have all these credit cards. They have all these bills, car loans. They put vacations on credit cards, all these things. So they have lots of debt, which is eating them alive. It's taking away their disposable income. It's taking away their ability to have money left over to invest, because they use too much debt for things that are going, let's say, going down. Here we have people that are way smarter. Let's put some glasses on this guy. Here we have people that are way smarter, and they listen to Dave Ramsey, and they know better. I don't use debt because I watched what happened over here. I got out of debt. It was crushing me. I'm never going to use debt ever again. And so they have no debt, but they're only saving a couple percent, 5% of their wealth every single year, and it's not really growing. So they don't really have much money. Then over on this end, we have the other side of the curve. As a matter of fact, let me pull up this chart right here. You might recognize this meme. We call this meme the Midwit curve. So over here is too much debt, but it's bad debt, right? Depreciating assets, all going down. Then we have the Midwit. He's very smart. He's, like I said, watched all the videos. He's paid off all his debt, and he's got none. But over here on the other side of the curve is we have people that also use a lot of debt, So a lot of debt here, no debt here, a lot of debt here. But the difference is over here is all bad debt, all depreciating stuff, credit cards, going out to eat, things like that. Over here, they put all the debt into assets that are going up in value. That's the difference. That's the Midwit curve. So where do you find yourself? Most people have talked themselves out of, well, one, not realizing that the system changed, the monetary system changed. Number two, that if the system changed, I have to change my approach on how I play with it. And then three, we find ourselves stuck in the Midwit curve where we think we're being smart because we don't really understand the game the way it's meant to be played, that it's meant to be played by using assets and collateral inside this system. And the difference of why this matters is because the rate of money supply is growing at about 10% a year, which means our cost of living, cost of goods is going up about 10% a year. And like most people, we should have a goal. We need to have a certain amount of money that can pay for us so we don't have to continue working until the day that we die if we don't want to. What happens is, for most people, let's say that I have, 100K, and I have, whatever, 15 years to get there, but I need $1 million, which means I need a 10x return. But most people are making a 6-7% return, 8% return. That's barely keeping up with the rate of inflation, and they end up with about 400K. But the problem is, for you to go from 100K to the million that you need, you're going to need about a 16 times return, or 16% return per year. I'm sorry. It's a 10 times return total, but it's a 16% compound annual growth rate each year. So the question then becomes, well, how do I go from this yield here where I get to 400, and how do I get to here, to here, to here? And the answer is, I have to start to learn how to use my capital. I have to start to focus on return on my equity and not just on my investments or my assets. Okay, let's break down the math for you so you can understand how this works. Okay, so we use sort of the same 2 points. Actually, it's a little bit different. Instead of 100 to 10, it's now 400,000. So maybe I have 400,000 starting capital, but my goal is to get to 2.4 million. Now, I know where I want to go, and I know where I'm at now. So the question I have to fill in the blank here is just now the gap. It's the engineering. It's a math problem. So there's 3 levers that I can pull that can change this. Number one, I have the amount of capital, which is this number. So if I need to get here, I could add more capital. I could make more money. I could sell something, buy something, whatever. Number two, I have the time it's going to take me, this gap, this trajectory, this horizon. And then 3, I have the rate of return, or my yield, okay? So the way it works is I have 72 divided by my return. So if I make a 10% return, that means that every 7.2 years, my money supply doubles. Okay, so if it's 7.2 years, that means In 7.2 years, the 400 becomes 800. And then another 7.2 years, that becomes 1.6 million. And another 7.2 years, that becomes 3.2. So if I wait 7, 14, 21 years, about 21 years, I can get to that goal at a 10% return. But let's say that I don't want to wait that long. I don't want to wait 21 years. I want to get there in 15, or I want to get there in 12 or in 10. Well, then that means either one, I have to put more capital in, or number two, I have to get a better return. So instead of 10%, if I go to a 20% return, now I've dropped it to 3.2 years. So now if we do the math over, that means every 3.2 years, 400 becomes 800. And then 3.2 years becomes 1.6 million. And then 3.2 years, it becomes the 3.2. So now, about 9 years, a little bit less than 10 years, I've managed to meet that goal. Great. So if that's what I need, if I can't put more money in and I can't wait longer, can't wait to 21 years, then I have to get this number up. So that leads us to what we're talking about right now. How do we do that? Well, we do that by engineering a return. Now, what most people do is they turn to gambling, right? So they're chasing meme stocks and they think they're gonna do options trading and they're gonna like sit on Reddit and Twitter all day looking for like the pump and dumps or whatever they're gonna do, but you're not gonna be able to do that for 10 years straight. Like you can get lucky once or twice, that's about it. So what we have to do is we have to build out structure and rules. And so what most people do is they take their $100 and they divide it up. They're gonna put 60% here, they're gonna put 40% here, 10% here. But what we want to do is build a vertical structure that allows us to get velocity through our assets. So each dollar is multiplying and $1 can now control 3 assets at one time. That's how we build a structure that gets our return on our equity up, as opposed to most people over here focus on return on their investments. That's the whole shift that you need to focus on. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we know what number we need to watch right here? Well, as I said, we kind of have 3 different things. If we want to know how to diagnose the system or build the system or understand the gaps in the system, it just comes down again to 1, your capital, 2, the time you're willing to wait, and 3, the return or the yield that you're making. So identify where you're trying to go, understand where you're starting from, and then understand the 3 levers. If you have time on your hands, if you're young, you're watching this video and you got 20, 30 years, you have time on your side, allow that to compound. If you don't have as much time on your hands, then you either need to get more capital, but some of you may not really be able to get more capital. So the one thing that you could probably affect is the return, and you do that by building a different structure, a layered structure, and more specifically focusing on not ROI, but instead focus on your equity and what your equity is returning for you. All right, let me know what you think. If you want more deep dives on any of these topics, let me know down in the comments down below. As I always say, to your success, I'm out.